Oh, hello, students. I hope that that you're happy that you're in this course. That we're gonna to get started with the information. One of my rules in any course that I create is normally to keep an open mind. So that's the only rule that I'm gonna give you for this course. It doesn't matter where you come from or what your beliefs are, but just keep an open mind. Now, I'm telling you to keep an open mind because you're gonna hear the evidence on the historical and research part of Atlantis, and some of it might be things that contradict what you have heard on popular culture or online or on websites or without doing really like scholarly research. So I wanted to say that everything that we're going to be presenting here follows Ignatius Donnelly Atlantis, which is the main work or research work from this very famous professor and historical professor. So I wanted to make sure that you know that the information that you're getting here is not something that we just kind of put together by listening to popular culture, by going online and picking up or cutting, pasting things from places, but that you're actually getting from the Ignatius Donnelly Atlantis, the antediluvian world. You're getting the information that he did, the basis of the research. And we're going to learn about Atlantis not from a popular culture view, but we're learning Atlantis by going through the history of Atlantis. So I'm going to talk about a little bit in a minute about the purpose of the course and what things we're going to be covering in the course. But just to let you know that you're going to be learning about, not only the history, but was it possible? What testimony is there in the sea, in the flora, in the fauna? We're going to obviously talk about the Bible and the deluge of the Chaldeans and how there are different legends from different nations and some of this consideration of these legends. We're going to talk about reasoning for the destruction of Atlantis. And believe me, you're going to learn about so many different sciences, things that happened during that time. And not only about different civilizations, but we're going to talk also about how was the environment, how was the weather, what are different civilizations, what are the evidences as far as historical, archaeological evidence for this. We also going to touch on the Genesis and our origin of our alphabet. We're going to talk about the Bronze Age in Europe. So without any ado, as you can see, I think you can gather that it's not going to be something that is, just picking up things from the outside world or like things that I have seen in a cartoon or in a movie or anything like that. This is a very serious course for those people that have heard of Atlantis and they are curious to learn about Atlantis and Lemuria. Now, goals for the course, just to give you an idea, so this course is an attempt to demonstrate several distinct and novel propositions. And these are, just so you know, that there once existed in the Atlantic Ocean, opposite to the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea, a large island, which was the remnant of an Atlantic continent, which is now known to us as Atlantis. And with also one of our main propositions, I'm going to show you evidence that the description of this island that was given by Plato itself is not, as it has been long supposed, fable or myth. And this is a very important point. But this is a veritable story and history of actual things that happened. My number 3 point is that Atlantis was a region where men first rose from a state of barbarism into a civilization that it was new. We're gonna talk about how Atlantis was ahead of its time technologically. Also, another proposition of Atlantis is that it became in the course of the ages a populous and mighty nation, from whose overflowings the shores of the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi River, the Amazon, the Pacific coast of South America, and the Mediterranean, and also, of course, the west coast of Europe and Africa, the Baltic, the Black Sea, and the Caspian were populated by these civilized nations or tribes. And so we're going to explore the different kind of tribes or civilizations that came from Atlantis and how Atlantis was formed at the beginning. Because Atlantis is contemporaneous, and I'm going to leave it like that but for right now, with the antediluvian world, we're going to talk about the Garden of Eden, the gardens of the Hesperides, the Elysian fields, the gardens of Alcinous, the Mesomphalos, the Olympus, the Asgard of the traditions of the ancient nations. You probably have heard that in popular culture. When you're talking about Norse or Wiccan tradition. Also, we're going to learn about this great land that mankind dwelled for ages in peace and happiness. Because we're studying different tribes of the world, and sometimes we have to make valid points and compare religions, faiths, or that cultural beliefs that were happening not only in Africa and in Europe at the same time, or in other nations. We're going to learn about gods and goddesses of the ancient Greeks, for example, the Phoenicians, the Hindus, and the Scandinavians. And we're going to relate that to say that we're simply the kings and queens and heroes of Atlantis. We're also going to learn about real people that existed and the acts attributed to them in mythology, which are confused with a recollection of historical events and sometimes in popular culture, as for example Disney or any kind of book that talks about Atlantis or mythology, are confusing facts that any stories that really happen. It's sort of like a half-truth, So we're going to learn the veracity and the truth and the real history. And I'm going to give you, and you can research yourself as we go through it, I'm going to give you a scholarly, peer-reviewed journals, written links, and we're going to learn about the different sources and what is the veracity of the sources. Because the mythology of Egypt and Peru represented the original religion in Atlantis, which was sun worship, we're also going to talk about Egypt in itself. Another proposition is that the implements of the Bronze Age of Europe were derived from Atlantis. So the Atlanteans were also the first manufacturers of iron, so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the Phoenician alphabet, which is a parent of all the European alphabets. And this alphabet was derived from the Atlantis alphabet, which was also conveyed from Atlantis to the Mayas of Central America. Maybe if you're a student of history, you have heard about the Aryan race or the Indo-European family of nations, as well as the Semitic peoples. And so we're going to trace a lineage from Atlantis to the Aryan or Indo-European family of nations, as well as the Semitic peoples and some of the Turanian races. We all know, or we have heard before, even that from popular culture, because you already are a researcher and a historian, that Atlantis perished in a terrible convulsion of nature, in which the whole island sunk into the ocean with nearly all its inhabitants. But what a lot of people don't know, and we're gonna go through that too in this course, is that a few persons escaped in ships and on rafts and carried to the nations east and west the tidings of the appalling catastrophe which has survived our time in the flood and the loose legends of the different nations of the old and the new worlds. In sum, all of these propositions are going to validate its existence and the history of Atlantis. And so, I guess my point is to present this information to you so you can make your own mind and you can evaluate your beliefs and possibly solve some questions, maybe some curiosities that you had about Atlantis. If these propositions can be proved, they will solve many problems which now perplex mankind. They will confirm in many respects the statements in the open chapters of Genesis. They will widen the area of human history. They will explain the remarkable resemblances which exist between the ancient civilizations found upon the opposite shores of the Atlantic Ocean in the Old and the New Worlds, and they will aid us to rehabilitate the fathers of our civilization, our blood, and our fundamental ideas, the men who lived, loved, and labored ages before the Aryans descended upon India, or the Phoenicians settled in Syria, or the Goths had reached the shores of the Baltic. The fact that the story of Atlantis was for thousands of years regarded as a fable proves nothing. There is an unbelief which grows out of ignorance, as well as a skepticism which is not born of intelligence. So that's what I require you for this course. Open your mind and think about what makes sense to you. The people nearest to the past are not always those who are the best informed concerning the past. So for thousands of years, it was believed, for example, that the legends of the buried cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum were myths. And they were spoken as these fabulous cities, like mythical things that nobody has ever walked on or never seen. I can tell you for a fact that as a person that has lived in Italy and in Europe, I had been to Pompeii, and it's no myth. For 1,000 years, the educated world did not credit the accounts given by Herodotus of the wonders of the ancient civilizations of the Nile and of Chaldea. He was called the father of liars. Even Plutarch sneered at him. And now, in the language of Frederick Schlegel, the deeper and more comprehensive the researches of the moderns had been, the more the regard and esteem for Herodotus has increased. Buckle says his minute information about Egypt and Asia Minor is admitted by all geographers. So that's one of the things we're going to do in this course too. We're going to show you the geography and how the tribes went, where they originated, and how was Atlantis. Not only in the words of Plato, but I'm going to show you validation through research scholar that Atlantis existed. If I succeed in demonstrating the validity of the San Juan propositions or the Starling propositions that you're listening here, which I'm commencing in this course for you, it would only be bringing to bear the question of Atlantis. 1,000 questions more, 1,000 converging lines of line for a multitude of researches made by scholars that came before me in the fields of modern thought. Further investigations and discoveries will, I trust, confirm the correctness of the conclusions to what Ignatius Donatelli, which is the author of the main research and book, and others in this new aware universe that we're living. And now I'm gonna lead you with some words from Festus. Festus said, "The world has made such comet-like advance Lately on science, we may almost hope, before we die of sheer decay, to learn something about our infancy, when lived that great, original, broad-eyed, sunken race, whose knowledge, like the sea-sustaining rocks, had formed the base of this world's fluctuous lore. Thank you for listening, and I see you on the first chapter, in which we'll be covering how Plato and his story and the story of Atlantis came to us through history.